Hi, I'm Patrick Palm, CEO and founder of Favro, and this is the Learn from Leaders podcast. The background to this show is that Favro customers are some of the most innovative companies in the world. Enterprises wanting to be more agile, software as a service companies scaling fast, and game developers and publishers wanting to master live ops. So we get to know some truly inspiring leaders in product development, marketing, operations, sales, executive management. And what we do here is that we interview them about leadership so we can all learn from them. Let's go. And we are live with Jenny from Game Boost. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to this because we're going to talk about talent in the game market, and there's a lot of stuff going on there right now. So we're going to talk about everything happening now, changes with talent in the game market, and I'm looking forward to hearing your views also in the future. But for the ones who don't know you already, why don't we just start a little bit with your basically your origin story. How did you get to what you're doing today, and maybe also say a little bit about Game Boost.
Yeah, cool. I'm trying to keep it short. I not a gamer. That is still at my weak point where I've become more a gamer now. But I started as a producer at Paradox up in northern Sweden, where I live. Got lucky, I guess. They needed someone, and I was working in IT as a product manager, so I got a job. Did that for a few years, and then I got the opportunity to take over and run that studio as a studio manager. And that was, a dream job. Working in games, great, but also where I first got to see how hard it can be to recruit in games and to find the right people on the right time. So that is basically why I then started Game Boost, to try to help other people release some of that stress that comes from not being able to find the people that you need to deliver the milestones on time. And Game Boost is basically a consultant company. So we find studios who need talent, and we match them with developers who need contract work.
Awesome. And there was one thing you said there that made me think a little bit about the kind of cycle of talent in production. We've both been in the industry for quite a while, and looking at AAA productions, going with back in time, very often it was a very steep or let's say peaky curve, kind of like how ramping up people when moving later into production, and then those people weren't needed anymore. But then of course, if you have a studio where you have several products going on, there might be some overlap, so then you could basically keep your talent, and you kind of have that whole cycle to deal with. Is it still very much like that in the industry, or is it a little bit more, let's say, even now with live services?
I think it's still like that in a lot of places. I mean, I also tried that thing with having parallel projects to move people in between. It looked like a great solution, but then you find out that there are so many changes and pivots. So when you made this perfect plan for when people were going to transition, it never actually worked out. But I think a lot of studios, especially the bigger ones, are still somewhat trying to do that. But I'm also seeing a lot of new generation studios that come from the bigger ones that started their own smaller studios. And I see a lot of people now building a really strong core team and then doing the scaling with externals. So it's a bit of both nowadays, I would say.
And yeah, I totally agree with you. I definitely seen that trend as well. What, in your opinion, what is it that's stopping the bigger studios, the ones that've been around for a long time, to not go into that model more aggressively than they are? Is it just tradition, so to say, or is it something else?
I think it is tradition. Like when I started in games like 10 years ago, I heard a lot like, no, that's not how we do it. We need to have someone in-house because they need to be loyal and they need to be passionate about their games. We need to keep all the knowledge in-house. And I think some of that still lives on. So that's part of it. But also it's quite hard. Like I had problems finding contractors too. And now I see more people like me popping up, but the studios aren't really ready. I don't think I work with any studio that has a clear setup and process for how to work with externals or actually include that in their staffing planning from the get-go. So I think it's habit and maybe a little bit of knowledge on how to do it.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And now with more, let's say, hybrid organizations, coming out of COVID, and more organizations are used to this. Is that something that you see are, let's say, helping with this, or is it doesn't matter?
It does matter. I mean, COVID kickstarted the whole remote work, and some studios are staying in it, and some studios are now going back to it. But I think it also showed people that we can work remote and it works, and that means we can also have externals joining our teams remotely. So they're now a little bit more prepared, both technically because now we have the setup since COVID, but also mentally that it did work.
Okay, so if I interpret you right, the fact that with their employees, the studios are working are more comfortable now, comfortable and confident having people on the team, working fully or partly remote. That makes the leap to kind of extending the team with contractors that are remote smaller. Is that a
Yeah,
correct way to
I
put it?
would say so. Yes.
Okay, cool. Um, and you were telling why you started Game Boost, but you kind of been hinting a little bit at your services here. I do want to give you a chance to kind of just when you pitch your services, how do you typically put this forward?
Well, I guess we are the people you call if you need someone on your team fast. It can be an individual, embedded, a programmer, artist, designer, or whatever you need, or if you need a full team to handle a porting or a prototype DLC. So I guess we are a staffing company for the games industry.
And when you say that, is it only contractors, or do you also do recruitment of full-time employees?
We don't do recruitment, sadly. We get that requests a lot, but for now we're only doing contractors, and we also only focus on remote.
Yeah. And why did you say sadly?
Well, I don't know because we are a support company, so you want to give support, right? So when people go, "Can you also do this?" You want to go, "Yes, of course we can do that," but we're not doing it. It would take too much time, I think, now for us to diversify that much. And yeah, the contracting setup works well for us.
Yeah. Well, focus is important. I mean, we're both entrepreneurs here,
Yeah.
and focus is key. And taking the things you were saying about the market, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And I have to ask you one more thing on this, and we're kind of segueing into the topic of today in a very, very. This is probably one of the most natural ways ever on this podcast. Transitioning
Huh.
from background story into the topic. So the question I want to ask, I mean, if we look at this from the other point of view, the talent, I can imagine that there's also an increasing amount of people that for life reasons want to work from maybe not pack the bag and move to Stockholm or whatever the studio is, but actually want to work from a totally different place. And with these things happening now, and with someone like you that can help, having the studio, getting in contact with the right contractor, can actually have the life wherever they want. Is that also an increasing trend that you're seeing as well, which is kind of like fueling this from the other side?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I started out saying that I wanted to support the indie dream. So, meaning that we do work with a lot of smaller studios that for some reason need to rent their staff out to survive financially. So they, of course, are very happy that we exist and provide them gigs. But now I also say that we support the lifestyle dream because we have a lot, like you say, a lot of freelancers. For example, we have one guy who is super happy with this setup because he wants to work from the French mountains. He lives up there in some barn setup and he still wants to work with games. So for him, this is perfect. So, yeah, I think that a lot of people don't want to go back to on site working. They want to do remote, they want to travel maybe, and they really like this kind of setup.
Cool. Can we go a little bit deeper on this? What does it typically look like? Because I think both people listening to this on both the say the team member contractor side and the let's say that studio head or producer who maybe haven't done this many times before and now is actually making that plan that we talked about. You just so we can get expectations right a little bit here, because I also get this a bit of a spectrum. The person you mentioned with in the mountains there in France, that sounds fantastic. And what for a person like that? So I mean, in this particular case, is that an artist or a coder, or can you share?
Yeah, in that case, it is a coder,
Hmm.
but we do work with artists as well. And I mean, it's super easy. Like we have a web page where they can find their open positions. They can apply for that, or they can just connect with us. And once we find something that fits them, we will reach out and say, "Hey, here's this opportunity. Do you want us to put you forward?" We do, and then they enter the process of the studio, which is can be different. It can be work cases or interviews. They get the job and they basically start working from wherever they are, and they just invoice Game Boost monthly, and be happy in their mountain or on their beach or in a wherever city of their choice, I guess.
And just to continue on that, then is the expectation typically that from time to time, they will travel to the studio and be part of some kind of internal workshops, meetings, on sites or off sites, or is it like 100% remote? Typically, they basically never meet face to face, or how does this typically look?
Yeah, that differs. I would say personally that I think the best setup is when you meet sometimes, but that is obviously up to the studio and this contractor. So sometimes the studios want them to come in, maybe for an onboarding, maybe for some studios, remote studios have quarterly meetups that they invite other contractors to join. But it's completely up to the studios, and I would say it's maybe 50-50. The ones who wants them to come in sometimes, and the ones that are completely remote, and you never need to go to the office.
All right, cool. So then, going a little bit more, generally into everything happening now. I mean, there was, there's been quite a few announcements, not only recently, but basically throughout the whole year, with pretty substantial layoffs. I mean, not only in the game industry, but in tech in general. But if we stick to the game industry, of course, there's a little bit of overlap with talent. But how if we maybe start in the end, your perspective on why this is happening. That might sound like a stupid question, so I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on it. How much of it is, again, I'm not asking about like hard data here, just a little bit more kind of like your your feel for it? Because there's plenty of data out there. I want to get more the sense from the trenches, so to say. A little bit more anecdotal. Is it simply studios going under? Simply this projects canceled. There's no money, and how much of it is that especially bigger companies taking advantage of the fact that this is something which is happening right now, so they take that opportunity to basically cut costs to boost profitability. So just if you could share a little bit like your read on the dynamics right now.
Yeah, I think first of all we need to remember that we work in a hit-driven business. Like now, yes, it's more I think than normally, but this happens a lot. Like you get funded, you make your project, it works great. If it doesn't, you let a lot of people go. So it's not something new here. But I think it's a little bit of everything. Like you said, sure, there are probably some companies thinking, wow, this is a great timing to to get rid of some people, as bad as that sounds. But I think most people are genuinely sad when they have to let their people go. Um, and sometimes I also get the feeling we see the layoffs, and when I contact the people, they have sort of been redirected to some other part of the company, or so those are good cases. Obviously, a lot of people don't get that lucky. Um, and I think also what we're seeing now is a little bit of the hangover from the COVID hybrids that we saw happening. Because obviously during COVID, a lot of people were at home playing games. So we sold a lot of games. And I think some people just thought, wow, this is the new normal now. Like this is our business case now. And everyone wanted to grow and everyone just recruited like crazy. And then now we're back to some more normal numbers, maybe. And, you cannot support that big of a production anymore. So I think it's a bit of a mix of a business as usual, this being hit-driven industry, the COVID hangover, and some people taking or companies taking advantage of the climate to do some cleaning.
Thanks. I really appreciate your point there around that. This is kind of normal in the game industry. I think probably it's a more of a bigger shift in some parts of the tech industry where it's just been like up, and
Yeah, but I also think because we're probably getting a lot of information now because of social media. Like every layoff that is happening, we all see it. We all read about it. So it's in our face much more than maybe it has been previous years.
that's a good point. So if I can ask you a follow-up question on that. So if I have my kind of high level numbers right, we did see a decrease of the game industry in 2022. It seems like 2023 is gonna end not as high as 2021, but better than 2022. And projections for 2024 is that then we're past the record year of 2021. So and then zooming out even further, if we take more of say a 10-year perspective or 20-year perspective, this industry is growing amazingly. It's a dominant form of entertainment today in a way it's never been before. So there's obviously a very, very strong meta trend, even if it's a bit dynamic right now. And my question based upon that is the following. You were mentioning that there's a little bit of like a hangover situation here, and which I think is true. Do you think that there's also, let's say, a bit of a lag, so that if we look at basically if these projections are correct, so 2024 will actually be a pretty good year from a revenue point of view for the industry, that again will start becoming a an engine for also for a lot of talent, even more talent going into industry. I mean, basically, since I guess my question is this, if we're looking at the revenue numbers of the industry, there's been a little bit of a not a bump, but a dip, but it is going up. And do you project that, when it comes to, people employed in the game industry, that will follow that curve, upwards, but maybe there's a little bit of a lag.
Yeah, I think so. I think this is still a good industry for the people looking to get into it. This will turn around. Maybe we're going to see more contractors and external, at least for a while, because now people are a little bit scared, I think, to recruit. Not everyone, but I also think that we're going to see this trend with bigger layoffs. I think is here to stay, because as we grow our productions, like a game production now is much bigger than it used to be. It's longer, it's more people. So you get a big investment and you work for a long time, and the same amount of games are probably going to fail as before, only now the teams are bigger. So when they fail, it's going to be more visual that they had to let go more people. So I think that trend is probably here to stay, that we're going to see that the bigger layoffs happening once in a while. But overall, as a business, I mean, we're going to grow and we're going to employ a lot of people.
So if I interpret you right, then your prediction then is that let's call it the mix of employees versus people on a contract in production, that mix is changing, so there will be a higher degree of contractors, and that will basically be the new norm. Am I interpreting you right there?
That is what I'm seeing when I talk to these new studios. But of course, I'm a little bit biased here. But I feel that is where a lot of studios are going currently, a lot of the new ones.
Well, the new ones are the ones leading the way. So I mean, I can speak from favorite experience as well. That, I mean, we have game customers that are both new, venture-backed studios, and also studios that have been around. Well, studios and publishers, I should say, that's been around for a very long time. And if I look at the ones that's been around for a long time, I mean, at least the ones that we are working with, I mean, they're not optimizing for status quo. They do want to, there's some change going on, and that is typically to become more, like what the newer studios are doing, not the other way around. So that makes a lot of sense. I have a bit of, well, let's say, more of a detailed question for you on this, that ties into both what you said now and something we talked about before. So see if I can formulate this clearly. You mentioned before that there's a bit of a skill around being able to work with contractors, to be used to that. So obviously there's going to be quite a bit of a difference between a studio who's been doing this many times. They have basically a playbook for how they do this. They have people, who knows, that playbook. Okay, now we need to ramp up. This is how we do it. With those externals, they send you an email or pick up the phone or ping you on Discord, and then you have studios that don't. They need to do this. They need to learn this. One of the experiences that I have from Fair when it comes to externals is that often we come into conversations when they really want to achieve that the externals are feels like an extension of the team, rather than kind of throwing things over the wall. And what I can see is that the difference in the, say, productivity, efficiency is the difference is very big between a studio who's doing this well versus studios who's not. If you have a studio, they get a team, through a contractor. They're totally throwing things over the wall. There's a lot of cost, lost time, lost quality. It can actually be a very bad experience, all the way to the ones I see where it's very hard to distinguish who's actually on a contract and who's an employee. It's pretty seamless, and it's a very, let's say, collaborative process. The management of this is done in a very collaborative way, and and so the difference in productivity is massive. So this is something I've seen firsthand, and that leads me to the quite detailed question here, which is how do you are you able to see some differences there between studios that are doing this expansion with a team with contractors by basically contracting, let's say, one team, like one company, one team. You mentioned some indies where this can be a good way to get bread on the table, versus a studio which is basically handpicking many individual contractors. What I'm thinking here, giving another second to think about this, is that I'm thinking that the studio that are comfortable with actually handpicking many contractors, they're already in one way that's harder. So it means that they're probably leading into this much more, which means that might actually make it easier for them to be successful, because they kind of forced to do it well, versus it could be that you have an attitude that's like, well, we're just going to get that company, they'll take care of that, throw it over the wall, and maybe it's actually not so successful. So with that whole context here, what do you think?
It is is the question if studios are good at including their contractors, or what?
Well, I mean, sorry, I should have been a little bit more clear. Too much background. So basically this. So I'm guessing that you see, you have one case where the studio are relying more upon getting one or maybe two larger teams, larger contracts. So they basically employ a whole team, and that's how they solve this problem of having more talent. Um, and then you have the other alternative where, instead of getting like one big team, one company, they're actually handpicking individual contractors or
Mm.
smaller teams. And I guess there's a spectrum of everything in between. But if we take these two kind of scenarios, are you seeing some difference? That, I mean, my hypothesis here is that the ones that are handpicking individual contractors, they might actually be doing better, because it's in a way it's harder. So that forces you to be good at it.
Um, yes and no. I mean, there are the bigger studios. The thing is that they don't have the same person picking. Like, there are very few of the big studios who has a function that handles contractors. It could be HR, which does it as part of recruitment. It could be outsourcing, which does it, on the side of doing a bigger outsourcing thing, or it could be someone in the actual project, like a producer or a lead. And most of the cases, I would say it's still very much someone in the project. So that means that even if a bigger studio has a lot of contractors, they are normally spread out, and it's not the same people who hires them. So are they better prepared for contractors if they pick them themselves? No, not necessarily. Some are and some are not. I wouldn't say it correlates that much. They're probably, if they're used to working with contractor, what normally happens is they have a shorter process of getting them. If you're not used to it, then you try to go for your normal recruitment process with 5 interviews and a work case. I mean, that's not going to fly with contractors. It has to be more faster than that. So that might be the bigger differentiators, but I don't think. Or we've been lucky, because the times where we have been working with more on a team basis, the client studio always had someone they embed someone in the external team then to help coordinate and stuff. So, but maybe we've been lucky in that way. But we do separate. We don't do the traditional outsourcing. So we always say that we do embedded. And when we do teams, it's also somewhat embedded. Of course, they will then take ownership of what it is that they have to do, but we require someone on the receiving end to be there for feedback and for questions. Because I agree
Yep.
with what you said, when studios just, throw stuff over the wall, the results are often less good.
So I'm going to be a suspect of saying what I'm saying now, just to defend my own hypothesis. But it sounds like there's a little bit of like a success bias, that the ones that you are working with are the good ones, so to say. And I'm going to use that as the basis for my next question, which is what would be your advice? So let's say that you have someone in some kind of producer role. So this is the team, and you're going to look at now getting more talent for this production, and you want to do it, maybe with your help, but you're not experienced. So there was one thing you already said. Well, I already said two things. And one thing you said, well, your process needs to maybe be shorter. You can't treat it exactly like your recruitment process. We also talked about having a setup where it's not throwing over the wall. Are there other tips that you would like to share now for the ones getting into this and not being so experienced?
I mean, one is just let us help you. Like we have done this a lot of times with a lot of different studios, and I mean, we are there for you. We can help you with, your ads. We can help you with your process. We can help you even with the onboarding, like what normally works. So that is one thing. Be open to listening to what works. But I would say, one, don't wait until stuff is burning with contacting us or people like us, because we found that, when you need a contractor, it's normally because stuff is burning and you need them yesterday. And the studios where we already established some sort of connection beforehand, even if there isn't any need, it's much faster then to find someone. So build up your portfolio of suppliers, I guess, for externals before stuff burns. And also, one of the biggest things, because when I started Game Boost, I went on a tour where I asked a lot of studios, like, what is important to you in a contract? Like, what do I need to deliver? And the one thing that everyone mentioned is fast onboarding. Like, we need someone fast, and they need to be able to, hit the ground running and produce basically from day one. So the fast part I've got. I can give you someone within a week. The kick the ground running part, it needs to be a collaboration. So there, it's also important that they are open to suggestions and to actually have an onboarding. Because if you want your contractors to be efficient from day one, I mean, you need to help them. They will probably ask and they will try to get information from you. But if you come prepared, I mean, say, for example, you have a programmer. It's not super common to sit down, let that person sit down with one of your QA, for example, and have a play session. But if it is a gameplay programmer, it's going to be much easier for them to understand the code if they understand the game and have played it with someone who knows the ins and outs of it. There are small tricks along the way that we can help you with to make it more smooth.
It sounds good. And last question, and just from a geography point of view, how do you work? I mean, where the customers you have, is it worldwide? Is it only Nordic, only Europe? I mean, and then of course also on the sourcing side, where does the contractors come from?
The customers we have are mainly Sweden for now. Right now, we are looking into growing into other markets as well, a bit more aggressively. but mostly Sweden. And the contractors, they are mostly across Europe, because most people want people in the same time zone. But we do have people in US and Canada and India, and the contractors we get people applying to us from all over.
Cool. Well, I hope you do that expansion, started working with studios more widely. I heard good things about you, and I think the trends that we've been talking about today I think are good trends. I think it's good for the industry. And so there are players who are making that happen, that success happen, and you're one of them. So I'm not just asking you, I'm not just wishing you success, from the perspective of wishing success to fellow entrepreneur, but I do also think that you're a force for something good in the industry. So if you're successful, it's better for all of us.
Thank you.
Cool. And with that, thank you so much. Thanks to all of you listening, and I'll see you in the next one.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, you know what to do. Share it in your social media so more people can take part and learn. And one more thing, check out Favro Academy on favro.com for many more learnings. Thanks for tuning in.